Yo, what's shaking, everybody? We're back. It's the Orange Bloods Modcast. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by Jason, Anwar, Alex. The Longhorns are 1-0. They're going on the road to play Arkansas. We've got a lot to talk about. So before we do that, I'll just remind you, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, do all of those things that all of the YouTube people tell you to do. It helps us out. It helps the channel grow. And that's kind of our goal. We're trying to grow the channel. Fellas, the Longhorns are 1-0. And before we go into Arkansas prep and Jason's matchup rankings and how he hates the Texas defensive line and everybody on Orange Bloods hates him for it, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Louisiana game, simply because we've now had almost an entire week to chew on watching this team in action against another team for the first time this season. And so now I'm curious, 5 days later, what stands out? Alex, I'll start with you, mainly because you've done your deep digs. You've analyzed every snap of the game with every player on both sides of the ball. So 5 days later, going into Arkansas, what sticks out for you from Saturday going into this next game?
Well, I've written a lot about it. So you guys, I mean, if anybody who's not on Orange Bloods, I'd encourage you to go over there and check it out. I put a lot of work into the deep dig every week. I don't know where to start, Ketch. I think that, I mean, how about just from a broad just overview, and it's like kind of the thesis of my offensive line and offense article today. It's that if we want to look at this from the bright side, Texas went out and kicked their ass. It's a top 25 team. Texas went out and kicked their ass. They did so with creators. Hudson Card's a creator. He's a creator. He's quick on the draw. He can make things happen. He makes good decisions, even in the face of pressure, even in his first college football game. He can put it there on a dime. Bijan Robinson's an epic creator. I mean, just yards after contact. You saw how that guy can create. It's just, I mean, he whenever you say people create yards on their own, look up Bijan Robinson in this game, and you can see exactly what that means. And then Steve Sarkisian, just as a coach, as a play caller, man, like he's a creative dude. He sees things, he sees wrinkles. He'll call in plays and even audibles, that we saw twice. They checked out of plays from the sidelines in this game and checked into really good plays. This is a game that there were obstacles in front of this team that I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. And we can get into the meta stuff. I can tell you about the offensive line grades, or how much they lined up in 12 personnel versus 11 or 20, or any of that stuff, or, the snaps per disruption, different personnel groupings on defense, et cetera, et cetera. But I kept thinking to myself, Tom Herman might have lost this football game. There were times in this football game where Texas could have been on the brink of having something bad happen, especially because it was right there at the very beginning. You have that touchdown taken back, you go 3 and out. I'm not sure really how a Herman team would have responded. This is a team where they feel even keel. The coaching feels sensible and grounded in good fundamentals. It's a great foundation to build on, even though they are going to have to stack up a lot of small wins on that offensive line throughout the course of the season. As far as the offensive line, I feel like the work sort of starts right now.
Anwar, what about you? Same question.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was an impressive start. Catch, like to Alex's point, this was a ranked team that they made look like a Sun Belt team. And we haven't seen Texas make teams that probably shouldn't be on their level look like they shouldn't be on their level outside of like a Rice or a UTEP or something to that effect. And so that part was impressive. And to feed off of what Alice is saying, we've seen Texas teams in the past get a lead and then find a way to allow teams to get back into games. We can still look at that Oklahoma game from last year, Catch. I mean, that was a game where they had to bench their starting quarterback, and Texas couldn't find a way to just put it away and just, and keep it going. So, I never thought the game was really in jeopardy. I never felt like the game was in doubt. That speaks a lot to what Sarkisian and the staff was able to do. Again, building off Alex saying, playing your best guys at all times, finding ways to get those guys in space. And to the Bijan Robinson example is a great one. But even that wheel route for a touchdown, and I think Sark said like they had saw it. And so they ran that play like I think he said 3 times straight as fast as they could because they knew they had it. Those type of things and kind of just going away from the script or trying to get everyone involved. And we didn't see 10 receivers have receptions. And, we saw Sarkisian was the guy he's the guy that's putting guys in, right? So we don't have the running backs coach putting in their guys, the wide receivers coach are putting in their guys, tight ends are putting in their guys. Like he's controlling the offense. And so I would say it's an impressive start. We'll get into what Arkansas looks like. But for me, the last thing I'll say, Catch, as a person who predicted 8 wins, and I want to see a little bit more versus Arkansas, but now I look at it and say, all right, I now go ahead and scratch one off because I would have had that as a loss 9. And I start looking at, could this team do 10? I don't know. But, it was very impressive. I would say a very impressive start.
Jason, your turn. Just wanted to get your initial impressions.
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off what Anwar finished with. I think 8.5 was the over-under on win totals. I was under. I had him at 8. I think I'd probably go 9 now. And frankly, Anwar, based off what we saw from the rest of the Big 12 last week, Oklahoma struggling, Iowa State struggling, I think 10's certainly doable from this team. Again, hey, one game, like you said, let's see them back it up this week at Arkansas. But overall, Catch, I think to kind of sum up my thinking, better than expected would be how I would describe last week. I thought we'd see some sluggish play. I thought Louisiana would be able to hang around. It was only a 1-score game at halftime. It was like 14-6. I had to refresh here, but 14-6 at halftime. So they did hang around a little bit, but Texas did what good teams do, and they've just beat them into submission in just a much cleaner game than I would have envisioned. I mean, Sark on Monday mentioned the penalties on the punt return and a couple holds here and there. They want to clean that stuff up. Alex, of course, can talk about the offensive line needs to play much better, but overall, it was a much cleaner game, top to bottom. I thought it was a much better performance than I expected. I came out of that game feeling pretty good about Texas's chance of topping that 8.5 win total that I think we talked about before. And like Anwar said, I'm probably at 9 now, and I don't think 10 is out of the question by any means. One game, though. Hey, I'm always the guy that says slow, pump the brakes. It's one game. Show me again on Saturday on the road in a hostile environment. Then I'll truly start to buy in.
This might be the longest I talk during this entire video because I don't have a lot of power in the voice, but I wanted to echo a couple of points really that all of us have made and just say it slightly different. I've had some, look at that, there's my voice. I've had some questions about Steve Sarkisian since he showed up in Austin, mainly about how he runs the program. There have been some offers. They've taken the special teams guys. They've done a couple of things just from a planning standpoint that have made my eyebrows raise up a little bit, just things I wouldn't have done. So I had a little bit of a Steve Sarkisian question going into this game. I mean, they hired him because they thought he was an upgrade over Tom Herman, and I kind of wanted to see that. And I still have questions about some of the things they're doing from just a program blueprint and how they're doing some things. But my goodness, he answered the question from a coaching standpoint, as far as I'm concerned. I thought the offense looked really good. I thought that you could see the Sarkisian imprint in a way that you never felt that way with Herman. You never watched the Texas offense and went, and they were okay on offense. It wasn't that statistically they were terrible. I mean, we know they've been top 25 the last couple of years. I was really impressed with, for a game one, how, even though they were very vanilla, I think they held back and didn't do a lot of things. I was impressed with the manner in which the offense handled themselves. And then to Alex's point, they've got creators. And this probably becomes the part where we talk a little bit about Hudson Card and his first start in this video and where we think he goes from here. But his release, he does, for a guy making his first start, everything happened a beat faster than I felt like it would under Sam Ehlinger. Look, who's in the NFL and was having a good preseason before he got hurt. So it's not like Sam's awful, but there are some things that Hudson Card did that I think he gets the ball away quicker. his accuracy, that was always the thing that we questioned with Sam, is that Sam could be a little too inaccurate for a 2020 quarterback. Your completion percentage should be 65%, I think, as a baseline. If you're a really good college quarterback and you're playing in a good offense, it's not 2003 anymore. So the completion percentage should be high, but to put the ball exactly where it needs to be in small windows that allow your players to do things with it after the catch, where they're not, Jason, the picture breakdown that I did of that one play to Jordan Whittington, that happened a lot. And it makes me think that as bad as the offensive line is, when you've got great skill guys, think of Colt McCoy and Jordan Shipley in 2009, that offensive line was atrocious. But they were really good at quarterback, really good at one wide receiver position, and they got to a national championship game by being able to overcompensate with elite creators, Alex, even though the guys that we traditionally tell ourselves, you got to be good in the trenches, you got to win your battles there to be great. If you're good enough at those other positions, some of that stuff doesn't matter. And as bad as the offensive line played on Saturday, and they were just kind of average. Alex, is average a good way to sum up the five guys combined?
Yeah, I will say that 2009 team overcame that offensive line until Colt McCoy had to run one in at the goal line. But,
had to bring that up, didn't you, Alex?
Yeah, I'd say average. Denzel Okafor played a miserable game. Christian Jones was teetering on the edge of acceptability, but the rest of the guys were average. Derek Kerstetter, he didn't allow any disruption, but I felt like there were some plays where on the backside of some of those outside zone plays, it felt like he just wasn't very interested. They played average. I would say they played average, with the weakest link very predictably being Denzel Okafor.
If they really wanted to put their foot on the gas and really go all gas, no brakes, I think they could have run the score up on, they could have been a much bigger point total offensively once they really tired out Louisiana. So I'm bullish on this team. I don't know what it means, right, Jason? Because this next weekend's a different kind of challenge. But when we go back to Hudson Card, a 187.7 quarterback efficiency rating in your opener is really good. And in Louisiana, I think we have to be careful. I thought Texas made them look really average, but that's a team with 20 returning starters coming back off of a double-digit win team from a year ago. I'm curious, Anwar, to see where they go this week. You're going to be there. I can't wait for you to give me your impressions of Arkansas, because I did the Fayetteville trip back in 2003. For me, it might be the most raucous road environment that I've ever seen Texas play in. And not including the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, or probably no, you know what? I've been to College Station a bunch for those games. I think that game in 2003 in Fayetteville is the most raucous crowd I've ever seen. I think they're going to be gassed up on Saturday. This will test the maturity, the skill, and a lot of different things with this team. But if they come out and win this game, it really sets them up to get the start of the season the way they want to. And I think the sample size will be at a point where I think we'll know more about what this group's really made of.
I totally, agree with you. It's interesting because some of the players have been asked about the rivalry game. They don't know what the hell anyone's talking about. You have, Kurt Bowles is asking them questions. Have you ever heard of this thing and that thing? They're like, man, I don't know what you're talking about, man. And so, maybe it's good in some ways that they're not familiar with it, and they're viewing it as, a good game, a good competition. But, I don't think they're walking into that with the full understanding of how crazy it's going to be. Like, I don't think they have a full understanding of any of those things. And I'm sure Sarkisian will be fine and be able to guide them and direct them. And I think what might help them in an instance like this is the poise of a guy like a Hudson Card, because he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. He's just usually here just about all the time. And so when you have a quarterback like that, that is not a super rah-rah person, but literally how he scores a touchdown and how he throws an incomplete pass is probably the same reaction, probably helps him. Sarkisian is also kind of a laid-back kind of guy. He's not the guy that any of us are going to expect that will be headbutting players before a game, coming off the bus with a baseball bat or trying to run across a field to attack Mike Gundy, right? So you expect him to probably just be level throughout the entire time. And that might help them also in a hostile road environment. So, but like to your point, I'll be interested to see what Arkansas look like. I know Jason's got his matchups that are out as well. But to your point, it's a first true test. And I've said this before, but I'll say it one more time and I'll let everyone else jump in. Texas has not started a season 3-0 since 2012. I mean, the struggle against non-conference opponents has been real. Notre Dame has happened. Cal has happened. Maryland's happened. BYU has happened. So, if they beat Arkansas, assuming the craziest of crazies doesn't happen against Rice, this is a team that's probably starts 3-0 for the first time in like 10 years. So, it becomes a really good momentum builder if they can go on the road and beat Arkansas.
Anwar, do you think this team, I guess two-part question. Do you think previous teams under Tom Herman took on Tom Herman's personality? It was something I really started to think about while you were describing Herman's persona. Some of it always felt like a little bit of false bravado. And I wonder if we think that about his teams in retrospect. And then is it too early to say that this team has taken on the personality of Sarkisian beyond Hudson Card? Do we think that that's starting to occur?
It's a fascinating question. I need some more time to think about the first half of the question, because it's a good question. I don't want to throw anything out there to throw it out there. There was, at times a lot more talk than anything else, but they were close. I mean, they were close in a lot of games, but the little intangibles is what really hurt them. It's a fascinating question. I want to think about that a little bit more before I answer that.
All right. What about the Sarkisian part?
They definitely seem real calm, collective, cool. You didn't, even after the win that I was there, it was very businesslike. It was very, this is what we expected to do. We went out and did it. And there was no like celebrations of any point. I felt like they just felt like that's what they needed to do. And I do feel like they do take on a little bit of the personality of their coach. They seem to, like him, gravitate towards him, and they do definitely have his personality. Now, again, let's see it against Arkansas, and we'll see it a little bit more. But if Hudson and Sark, I mean, Sark is a little bit more of a talker than Hudson is, but you can definitely tell. To Alex's point, even at 14-6. You didn't feel the panic that maybe you've seen before. You didn't see guys overreacting. You didn't see the missed tackles. You didn't see guys trying to go and do out-of-body experiences. You sort of just kind of playing within themselves, especially on a defensive standpoint. A couple of little breakdowns, but not the huge, massive take it to the house breakdowns that we saw before. We just like guys are out of position. So, I would definitely say that's probably a reflection of what Sarkisian is bringing.
Jason, Alex, real quick, just on the Hudson Card thing. If I remember correctly, last week in the podcast, we didn't talk a whole lot about Hudson Card. Amazingly, like the quarterback conversation kind of was in the backdrop of the Louisiana game, weirdly, in our conversations. But as we get ready to talk about this Arkansas game a little bit more in depth, just any thoughts you guys had on the opening game performance of Card?
Well, I'll just say this. We haven't talked one bit about Casey Thompson on this podcast. I mean, so that says something. We were certainly talking about him last week as if he could still be a factor. I think that Look, man, at Sarkisian's press conference just this week, he was asked very specifically. You remember last week what he said? He was very specific. He said Hudson Card has earned reps in this first game. He will play in this first game. And I said to myself in my column, my reactions column, I said, that feels like it's kind of painting yourself in a corner. What if this thing's 21-21 at the very
Casey
end
Thompson,
of the game?
you meant.
But, the Card's been playing good, it's the defense that's kind of let the team down. Like now you're forced to have to get in Casey Thompson. It seems like a weird box to paint yourself into, but it turned out fine because at the very end of the game was not in doubt. He was asked that same question again this week, and he went a lot more sort of long range and meta with the answer. He did not commit to saying that he was going to be playing Casey Thompson in this game. He committed to saying, like, look, at Alabama, not 2-3 years ago, whenever we had Jalen and when we had Tua, we always made it, a priority in games where we could get Tua in to get him in because we're going to need both these guys through the course of the season. And you saw in the national championship game that year, Tua had to come in after half, and all the playing time that he had got during the season was very beneficial to, Alabama's chances to win that national championship game. Right. But he didn't answer the question about whether Casey was going to play this week. So to me, it feels like what Hudson did, regardless of what we say. And I mean, I think what we've all said is, Jesus, we're very impressed with the kid. Much more impressed with him than I was in any practice I'd ever seen of him. Sark, that tone has changed with Coach Sarkisian. It definitely feels like Hudson Card now. It's not really a 1A, 1B situation to me anymore. And, I think the fact that he seems to feel that way, the fact that it's sort of what everybody saw. I mean, what else can you say about Hudson Card, man? Like he looked really, really good.
I thought the fact that Casey Thompson didn't come in till late in the game, and it was end of third quarter, I certainly would have predicted him coming in before that. I think that was a pretty good indication in itself of how well Hudson was playing, that he's pretty much taken control of the job already. Assuming he doesn't take a step backwards. But, I thought Hudson, again, as I said about the whole team, I thought he was better than I expected him to be. I thought freshman making his first start, I thought you'd maybe see a couple splash plays, but then you'd have 3 or 4 drives in a row where you're like, oh, man, okay, maybe it's time to get Casey and see what he can do. Never really saw that. I mean, I thought he played well pretty much from the jump. I mean, they went 3 and out on their first drive, of course, but and what impressed me as much as anything, Ketch, is he did a lot of it under duress early on in that game. I mean, he was under fire from the Louisiana defense. I mean, they were coming at him, defensive line, blitzing off the corners, and they were getting to him. But he still made quick decisions. He was decisive. He was accurate. His ball placement was good. I thought he went to the right guy. I mean, from what I was seeing. So, he played well. But I think, hey, if this offensive line can give him more protection, let him go through his reads and survey the field a little bit, go through his progressions, he probably could even be a lot better. So, I came away from that game thinking, hey, that was as good of a week 1 performance from a freshman quarterback. And Ketch, you did a good job in your 10 thoughts. You broke it down and compared it to all the other freshman starters. And it was as good as a week 1 first game start as we've seen at Texas in 20 years of covering this program. So, let's see him back it up again in week 2 on the road at Arkansas. But, I give Hudson Card not just a passing grade. I give him probably an A for his performance in game 1.
It's funny. I don't know that you probably have to give him an A. I came away thinking, God, I wonder what it looks like on a day when they let him go and let him really
if he played all 4 quarters and they didn't take their foot off the gas, you're talking 300 yards and probably 3 touchdowns.
So is this a week? Yeah. Alex, I was going to come to you. Do you think, when do we think that kind of, when are they going to ask Hudson Card to, weirdly, I thought he was a little bit of a bus driver, and you can get away with that when Bijan Robinson is your running back and your skill guys are just making plays for you. At some point, they're going to need Hudson Card to do a little bit more. Is this a week where you think that takes place?
Well, at some point, I don't know. I mean, at some point, every great quarterback has got to take the opportunity to, put the team on his shoulders and go out and win a football game. Clearly, I mean, that's a big test that every quarterback is going to have to face. It's hard to know exactly when. Jason's done a lot more analyzing of what Arkansas looks like. From my nominal glances of it, it looks like Texas is definitely favored. Jason, I mean, are they favored in most of your matchups and stuff? It feels like they
are. Fans are on me again. I gave Arkansas the edge in the trenches, and I just said, hey, first off, I need to see the offensive line. I need to see more from the Texas defensive line against.
That's an interesting thing that we could talk about too. Is the defense?
Yeah, we will. But it's an offensive line. It's kind of like Louisiana Lafayette. They return all 5 starters. They've got, I think, 9 of their top 10 from last year are back. So, but across the board, yeah, Alex, I have Texas with most of the advantages in this game.
I think, Ketch, my answer to the question about Hudson Card, I think he'll be up to the task. I think he'll be able to put the team on his shoulders at the point in time when he needs to. But I don't think that's going to be anything that comes from Sark or saying we're going to let him loose or anything. I think that the time when you're an alpha quarterback and you're the QB1 and stuff, the time when you let loose is the time that you need to let loose to help your team win the football game.
Anwar, Bijan got his 20-plus touches on Saturday. And we didn't come – it was strange to not come away from a game nitpicking the usage of the players, right? It felt like it felt like a weekly deal the last few years where you just come away going, God, where was Jordan Whittington? Like, why did it take to the third quarter to get it?
Tight ends only split out 3 times last week, Ketch. Only
oh, my God.
It's just amazing. It's amazing. I'm sorry.
No. But, I mean, it goes to the point of the things – it's different. You can already see a difference in this team, and I think it's a positive one. We are professional nitpickers, and yet – It doesn't feel like today we're asking, God, on Saturday, are they going to get Bijan enough touches? Are they going to get the wide receiver packages wrong? And on third downs, you're not going to understand why certain guys are where they are, or even on the field, let alone why they're on the field. Is this Anwar, it's a tough thing to answer, right? Because it's a 1-game sample size. But do you think we're headed, this is our new norm? It's a great first piece of evidence to look at and go, okay, maybe the things that we've been worried about covering this team are no longer things to worry about. I guess, A, are you comfortable yet with some of these things are in our rearview mirror? And B, what's our new nitpick? Can you project that?
So there's a philosophical difference, offensive difference between Herman and Sarkisian. Herman was always a big proponent of we will take what the defense is giving us. Like that was always his thing. Well, you would ask him, why didn't you do certain things? And it's like, well, we just took what the defense gave us and that's how we were doing it. Sarkisian's approach is, this is just what we're due. And we're going to exploit your weaknesses, and you just have to deal with it. And so when you use the Bijan Robinson example, it wasn't per se, let's just take what the defense has given us. It's how do we get him involved in many different areas, whether it's the passing game, which we saw a lot of, whether it's, obviously in the backfield, maybe it's putting 2 running backs in the backfield. I mean, there was different things that he did in order to try to make sure that they asserted their will. And that's always the thing we've asked, again, Herman wasn't necessarily saying like, we're going to try to feed this person, 20, 30 times. As great as Bijan Robinson was, what's the most amount of carries that he had last year, Ketch? Well, I mean, was it 10 or 11? I mean, I don't think he had a ton in even the games that he went off. I think philosophically, you would see something a little bit different from Sarkisian, which might be the guy gets it 20 or 30 times because he just says, I think he's just that damn good. And you have to find a way to stop it. And that's always been his MO and his bell cow. The new nitpick will not happen until after a loss. And so that will be the new nitpick. Now, I think Alex is touching on it a little bit. And I think he touched on it a little bit of what he wrote on Orange Bloods. And I think the most obvious right now is the offensive line. And so Kyle Flood will kind of become that person that everyone looks at and says, all right, what are you going to do with this offensive line, from a recruiting standpoint, from a developmental standpoint? Because, I think Alex may have said this, but I know I've been thinking this as well. When you face a team like TCU and all the stunts that Gary Patterson is going to throw at you, if this offensive line is struggling against Louisiana, God help you when Gary Patterson gets a hold of you and what he's going to do with the things that he's going to be able to throw at this offense. So they really have got like a couple of weeks to really get it right, because when you start coming in here and face some defensive-minded people, whether it's Gary Patterson, whether it's Matt Campbell, they're going to throw different things at this offensive line, because right now when we start thinking of to catch, you and I talked about it all off season. What's the biggest area of concern? Offensive line. What's the area that we felt like they should have gone into transfer portal and tried to improve? We kept saying it was offensive line. The staff set kept saying they're good. So when they say like they're good, okay, you give them the benefit of the doubt, but we'll need to see a little bit more from the pass pro. I was probably speak more to the run blocking, but definitely from pass pro, they've got to get better.
Jason, it feels though that the offensive line's kind of what we thought it would be. I mean, I think even a week ago we were talking about, is there even a guy on this offensive line that we think first team all Big 12, second team all Big 12? It's really hard to point to a guy and say, oh yeah, that's their star player. I think Alex was like, it should be Derek Kerstetter, and he was okay on Saturday, but I don't know how much better this offensive line gets this season. I think the good news for Texas is it will at some point become a problem. It even did in 2009, the Nebraska game for the Big 12 championship. They literally couldn't get out of first gear because that group couldn't block Ndamukong Suh or anybody for that group. But in general, I wonder how much it's going to matter if your skill guys are really, really good, and Texas does have really, really good skill guys.
That's what I was going to say. Bijan Robinson, emerging Hudson Card, who I said made quick decisions. You got good skill guys to get the ball to. That can camouflage some offensive line weaknesses to some degree. Eventually, it'll probably catch up with you. But as poorly as I felt, and the offensive line played overall, I know Alex said he described them as pretty average, and that's probably pretty fair. It didn't seem to hinder the offense a whole lot last week, but it will catch up with you at some point. And it could catch up with you against an Arkansas team that's probably going to be as talented or more talented than Louisiana. Arkansas comes in this game, just came out last night. Their super senior defensive end is out for the year. He broke his leg. One of their linebackers is out for the first game after getting a targeting. Both their linebackers got targeting penalties last game.
Out for the first half.
Yeah, one was in the first half, one was in the second. So Bumper Pool will miss the first half of this game. But that offensive line I think would be probably the biggest concern coming out of that first game. And I don't think that's a huge surprise to anybody. But to your point, Ketch, I think you bring up a good point. Hey, how much better realistically can that group get? You can shuffle some parts. Maybe you put Kerstetter at center, or you bring Carrick in and maybe move some parts around. But I don't think it's automatically just going to flip a switch and all of a sudden, hey, this offensive line just found something and it's going to be a dominant offensive line. I mean, it is what it is. The parts of that offensive line are about what you expected them to be. Christian Jones is still a guy finding his way. They're young at center. Okafor obviously has struggled pretty much every time we've seen him on the field. So, Kyle Flood's got his work kind of cut out for him. I think they will get better just as they get more time together and probably learn a little bit more of what Flood wants from them. Offensive lines have to be able to work together. And the tight ends need to be thrown into that mix too. They miss some assignments as well. But I think there's a cap at how much improvement you can expect from this offensive line. Okay. I don't think it can suddenly become, one of the better offensive lines in the Big 12, maybe certainly not nationally, but I'll be curious to see moving forward if Kyle Flood tinkers with different guys at different positions. Because we saw it last year, right, Alex, at the end of the year. I mean, that offensive line, minus some starters down to injuries, played better.
Looked better.
Yeah, so, go back and look at that film from the last couple games of last year. Get Andre Carrick in there somewhere. figure out a way to move some guys around if you have to. I think there is room for improvement, but to Ketch's point, I don't know, no matter what Kyle Flood does, I don't know that you're going to see dramatic improvement from this offensive line, but they've got enough pieces around it where the offense still seemed to play pretty well, even in spite of subpar offensive line play last week.
Can I just say one thing quickly about Okafor? Because I think that one of the things clearly, if you bring in Carrick, you can bump Kerstetter down to center, move Majors to guard, or move Kerstetter to a guard, or move Angle out back to the left side, depending on how he's coming along with his injury. But the thing I think about Denzel Okafor is that Kyle Flood hasn't been here for the last 3 years to see him play and see him doing the same stuff over and over again. What I did see in this game was probably 4 or 5 plays out of Denzel Okafor where I said, oh, wow, especially with him getting to the second level, engaging defenders in free space in the run game. They were doing this doing this pin and pull stuff with the outside zone. Did you guys see the guards pulling and out, like sort of that outside zone look? When Denzel Okafor got in space in some of those plays, it actually looked really good. And that was Denzel Okafor that I'd never seen before, right? The Denzel Okafor that I'd seen before was the Denzel Okafor I got into Slack and yelled about and told you guys to watch this damn play. Look, he doesn't even get his foot out of the bucket and the guy runs right. Like, it's like, Jesus, it's the same shit. But there were some things where you might, if you're Coach Flood, you might look at it just that those kinds of plays might be hard to get out of your head. It's like, I'm starting to get this out of him. Maybe I can, and you know what? Maybe he can. And, that'll be up to him. Whether he's tinkering with it, whether it's just continuing to, just go to work and ring in the time clock and see if you can make Denzel Okafor better, make Christian Jones better. But it's like all you guys have said, and it's like I said in my column, this foundation, especially on offense, and honestly, this is an even keel, under control, very sound and fundamental defense, which certainly also helps an offense and helps a run game especially. But if we're building on top of this foundation, right, with these creators, Hudson Card, Steve Sarkisian, Bijan Robinson, these guys in the open field like Jordan Whittington, right? We're building on that kind of foundation. If the offensive line can just get incrementally better, we've already seen that this team can overcome, pretty miserable offensive line play in one of these games. I know I said it was average, but the reason why it was average is because, like I said, Denzel Okafor had some plays that were like A+ plays, right? That offset some of the other ones to make it where his grade wasn't completely in the tank. The same thing was true of Christian Jones and a lot of these guys. So even though on the whole they played average, you guys saw it. There were periods where it was miserable, right? If they can overcome that and they can continue to improve a little bit, when they've already shown that they can win despite this kind of hindrance and this kind of obstacle, I think that bodes well for the team in general. It's just going to take stacking those small wins and stacking those small developments in those key areas.
Alex, you touched on exactly what I wanted to get into, the soundness of the defense. We haven't spoken really much about the defense yet, so I wanted to kind of go there. We know that the goal of this defense is to hold teams under 20 points per game. They've told us that. They did that on Saturday. Probably deserve to even have a better, Louisiana gets to 18 probably because they started playing a bunch of twos and rotating guys in, and it felt like there was a clear drop off between 1 and 2. Casey Thompson comes into the game at quarterback, and it didn't feel like there was a huge drop off. In fact, Casey was really good on Saturday. What do we think the point total is what kind of game? Because that's kind of what I'm asking. If we have a point total in mind of what you have to score this week, Jason, do you think you have an idea of what that number is? I wonder what all of us think the style of game we're going to see on Saturday.
I'm not sold on Arkansas at all. I watched some of their game last week. I talked to Arkansas people, broke down the matchups. If they can keep quarterback KJ Jefferson contained in the running game like they had to do last week, and I think they will, I don't see Arkansas moving up and down the field against us, like we're saying, fundamentally sound. What we've seen is a fundamentally sound defense that tackled well. I mean, I think if Texas gets to 25, if they keep Jefferson contained, I think Texas wins this game. I don't think it's going to take 35 points necessarily to win this game.
Anwar, what about you?
Oh, I mean, Arkansas trailed Rice at halftime. You know what I'm saying? And what was the score going into the third quarter? It was like tied going after 3 quarters before they had to pull away against Rice. I mean, we see Rice. I mean, so I know people wanted me to do this reverse jinx thing and want me to pick against them. I can't do that all year long because it becomes a shtick, and then I look like an idiot after a while. So I can't just do that for 12 games. I'm not gonna pick Rice for a reverse jinx, right? So I just think Texas is a better team than this. I mean, that Arkansas, they weren't a good team last year. They are still not that great when you're tied with Rice going into the fourth quarter. If Texas goes and does what they did in this past game, that's probably a blowout win for Texas.
Interesting. Mr. Dunlap, same question. Just do you get a sense defensively for what your expectations suddenly become in a game like this for that defense?
All right. Well, so the over under is 56. So that means in the spread 7. So that means 28 minus 3.5. So 24.5 is the implied team total for Arkansas. So I would say, I think that the Texas defense is probably a little bit better than maybe Vegas is giving them credit for. So I'd say maybe I expect one of these games where it's right, teetering around 20, probably right around where their goal is. That would be where I would peg it.
I love the way your gambler mind just worked there, by the way, Alex.
He worked that out quickly, didn't he, too?
I was told there would be no math on this recording, and I was confused listening to him work that out in real time. From Alex, from a defensive standpoint, who is it? Are we Brockermeyer and Overshown as the playmakers was kind of the thing on Saturday against Louisiana. If this defense is humming along this Saturday against Arkansas, do you think the storyline stays the same, that it's a Ogofu, Overshown, Brockermeyer, and I'm not to say that the secondary won't make an interception or make a play at some point, but consistently it felt like the foundation for that side of the ball was defensive line win the battle on the line of scrimmage to free up the linebackers for the productivity.
I think, yeah, and that's just exactly what happened, Catch. Ovio Guofu, man, he did a lot too, just on his own. I mean, the other linebackers get a lot of credit for all the tackles they made and stuff, but he had a bunch of tackles too. He had a sack, he had a separate quarterback hit, a separate pressure, a separate tackle for a loss. I mean, he was all over the place. He was really good. Look, I don't think the teams are going to be able just to keep Keandre Coburn under wraps like this for the rest of the season. I mean, people talked about he was double teamed all game. I get he was double teamed all game. So was Tavondre Sweat. So was Byron Murphy. Both those guys were more productive than Keandre Coburn was. It just felt like a down game for Coburn, man, who I still consider one of the best players on this whole entire team and one of the best pro prospects that Texas has had in quite some time. It just something wasn't quite right. Whenever I look at what they do defensively, and so they have the two different, just if you look at the defensive player participation and you look at the two different defensive ends they have the one guy that they call the Jack and the one guy they call the Buck, right? And the Buck is like the defensive end outside linebacker hybrid type. That's what Ovi was playing. That's what Jet Bush would sometimes come in and play. That's what Ray Thornton plays, right? On the other side, it was it was just Jacoby Jones, who really didn't do much of anything. And it was Jet Bush who was coming in to spell him. I really think, man, what we started seeing toward the end with Alfred Collins, if you get big 95 in there and you put him on the other side at that Jack defensive end, whenever he's got to line up next to Coburn and lined up next to him as Moro Ajomo and lined up next to him as Ovi, good luck choosing which one of those guys you're going to double team. Just good luck with that. Because you're going to have to take you're going to have to take all 5 of your guys to beat 4 right then. You're still going to be able to free up Overshown, or you're still going to be able to free up Brockermeyer to be able to come downhill or move sideline to sideline like they were able to cleanly in this game. and you're going to start getting some production up the middle, because it's just like Alfred Collins is just a different. It's a different type of body to worry about than Jet Bush or Jacoby Jones. You know, it's 40 extra pounds of mass. It's 6 extra inches of just pterodactyl arm. They can slant across you. They can do all kinds of things to keep your body off of his. So I think as we see him develop, which he should, I mean, it seems like he should be developing. You know, he should be developing. Whenever he came in, we thought this guy's probably going to be a 3-year guy here in college before he moves on to the NFL. Only played 2 snaps in this game. I don't know why, but I think if Texas could do some things to maybe get him more involved, get that defensive line beefed up in those particular situations. Maybe a little bit less Jacoby Jones. I'm not sure he should be playing 70% of snaps. I think that's going to make it harder on the defense, and I think we might see harder on the offense, and I think we might see a little bit more productivity as a result from that, you know, from those interior front 3-ish guys.
Before we go into parting shots, Jason, I wanted to ask you a quick question and then go. I had one more question for everybody. You mentioned that Arkansas dealing with the injuries. They have a super senior who has a broken leg. If he comes back next year, does that make him a super senior?
A super duper senior.
Super duper, yeah. Yeah, this poor kid, I feel bad for him. And it just came out last night. He broke his leg at practice. He missed 2019 with an injury, all of 2019. Last year, he got injured in the first game of 2019, missed a whole year. Last year, he got injured in the first game, missed a big chunk of the year, came back, but was never himself, battled with injury. First week this year, he breaks his leg, out for the year. So as a super senior, so I've got the kid's name in my write-up. I don't have it in front of me, but, you know, you hate to hear of injuries, but, man, this kid's had some horrible luck. So I don't know can you appeal for a 7th year? Has that ever been done in the history of college football? Probably not. So maybe the NCAA will give him another year. I don't know.
And Junior Angelau, we haven't talked about the Texas injury situation. Texas has been really fortunate so far in the way of injuries, you know, on both sides of the ball. Doesn't feel, Alex, if Angelau doesn't play, do we think that the true freshman goes in there? I mean, I can't imagine they're shuffling things around too much.
No, it'll be Hayden Connor. I mean, Connor came in for the final 7 plays of that game. I think I can't imagine anything different than that.
Interesting. First 2 freshmen to start games at Texas out of this class might be Xavier Worthy, which isn't a shock, but I don't know that 9 months ago we would have thought Hayden Connor would be so, and obviously he hasn't outright won that job, but he was really good throughout the spring. You know what I mean? Like, we've noticed, Alex, you've talked about it all offseason, that he's a guy that we probably undervalued as a prospect in quick retrospect. Like, immediately it's like, oh, he's going to be really helpful.
Good. And Worthy, by the way, I just, as you mentioned him, you brought it up as if, you know, just like he's getting to play or he's getting to start or whatever, but I mean, it's more than just getting to start. I mean, he's dominating the snap percentage. He played 89.55% of the offensive snaps. He led all the wide receivers on the whole team. Like, he came in and played more snaps in that game than anybody that I've ever seen at Texas since I've been doing this for 8 years has played in one game. It was a really concentrated group, man. It was Xavier Worthy, it was Joshua Moore, and it was Jordan Whittington. And other than that, the most snaps anybody got was Marcus Washington with 10. So, I mean, it was those dudes, man. It was those 3 dudes.
Interesting.
Hallelujah, huh?
Yeah.
Well, and it makes you, if there were a wide receiver injury, you know, we even talked about that last week, that might be an area where, because it seems so concentrated on those 3 guys, that an injury to one of those 3 might change the offense more than anywhere else at this point, surprisingly. Anwar, I want to go to you. Last question before we go into parting shots. Was there anything you were surprised about? And I'm going to just everybody, same question. In retrospect, the most surprising thing from Saturday that you didn't see that you thought you might see?
That I didn't see that I thought I might see?
There's just anything that didn't happen that you thought, as you were thinking about that game in advance. I think Alfred Collins might be an obvious answer, that he just didn't play as much. But
I got one. If somebody just doesn't,
go for it, Alex.
I'm going to steal Jason's. I can't believe that freshman wasn't the punter. I can't believe that they have Cameron Dick back there punting. They have him working double duty, man. That freshman Isaac Pearson sure looked good at camp. I wonder how long they're going to keep Dicker doing the double duty. definitely goes to show probably what they think about. We were real worried about Bushevsky out there. So at least that is something that the staff also recognized. But yeah, I was surprised. I asked Jason during the game. I said, Jason, what was on that first point? I don't think it was Isaac Pearson. I watched back. I saw it was Dicker handling. Just Dicker's doing everything out there, man. It's crazy.
He's pretty good. I mean, he's really good. I mean, everybody will remember the missed field goal. And I guess when you're a field goal kicker, that's the only thing people are ever going to remember. But he punted. His kickoffs were great. He does make the 49-yarder later. Like, I think that Cameron Dicker was a low-key attaboy award winner for me. I thought, considering they had him doing everything, and he did everything at least pretty good, it's not something that people should take lightly. Anyway, Anwar, I mean, you guys don't have to have an answer.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that was a little bit surprising that, I saw a team that seemed a little bit more mentally tough than I've seen in the past, on all phases, that's probably the thing that, we've been programmed to have the oh shit moments throughout the past few years. Like, oh shit, here we go again. Like, oh, this is about to happen. And the fact that it didn't happen at all, that there was never that moment where you just thought like, man, it's about to all just fall apart because you didn't see that. That's probably the only thing that was surprising me, but in a good way. Like clearly that's what you want to have. That's probably the only thing I would say is surprising, not too much from personnel, Jared Wiley obviously got hurt. So, that kind of is what it is. But no, nothing that I saw that I was like really just, threw me off, and no, nothing.
Okay. Jason, you don't have to have an answer. I'm just wondering.
I mean, Alfred Collins thing was the big one, but the biggest takeaway that kind of ties in with what Anwar just said, there really weren't many meltdown threads on Orange Bloods, man. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I'm checking the board during the game, and I'm like, I think there was one after Texas went 3 and out. Someone not tongue in cheek, someone said like something about Hudson Card just doesn't look like he has it, and I'm like, by the end of the game, he's watching thread and bringing it back up, but by and large, man, I mean, I think even the Texas fans on Orange Bloods who have a critical eye, if there ever was a critical eye, they were pretty pleased with what they saw. So it was a nice Saturday of monitoring the message board for sure. Man.
Talk about professional nitpicking. Nobody like if we become like crotchety old men over the years, it's because our board is like taking us there. And you're right. Pretty pleasant last 6 or 7 days on the whole. Let's go into parting shots. Anybody want to go first? I actually have one that if you guys need some time to think about your parting shot, I'm willing to go first instead of last today.
You go first. I'll go after you.
I am finally, I've always prided myself on being a good fantasy football player. This week, we had our draft on, I don't even know what day it was. I guess it was Tuesday. I found myself during the draft feeling like I'm like the guy that's going to suck this year. Like I was in the middle of the draft and people were taking names and I was like, who the fuck is that guy? It happened on more than one occasion. I did not, unlike Alex, try to draft somebody that had already been drafted. So I didn't have that happen, but there's no doubt in my mind that Alex is about 5,000 times more prepared than I was for that draft. For the first time ever.
How did that dude take Tyson Williams in the 7th round or whatever? It's crazy, man.
You spelled his name out for us because when he was drafted, you were like, just so you know, that's TY apostrophe.
I was just trying to help you in case you're trying to find this weirdo in the player.
Well, I know, but then like 2 rounds later, you tried to draft him.
Yeah, I know.
Alex, I got him in the 17th round in our draft, dude. So as a keeper, man, a 30-round draft. So
anyway, I'm just saying, for the first time ever, I am donating my $200 fee to get into the league. Whoever wins it, enjoy my money. I just hope I win one of the weekly point totals once this year. If I can get $50 back, that's probably my ceiling. So I am just acknowledging in the very beginning
This reverse jinx bullshit.
Boy, I was like, Justin would call this out so quickly.
That's a little
He's already hitting us with call
this BS out.
When you're as unprepared, look, Anwar for the last few weeks was like, I can't do any of my draft simulations. I want to get in there. And I kept telling him, I don't know, man. I haven't done any. I don't think I'm going to do any. I paid the price on Tuesday night. I did. I got into those rounds and I was just like, and you know what? The roster watch cheat sheet did not run deep enough for me, Alex, for our draft. I needed a few more names on that roster watch cheat sheet to get me through like round 16, 17, and 18.
Using the PPR sheet, yeah.
Anyway, that's my parting shot. You guys can call it the reverse jinx attempt. There's some slight truth in that, but I'm falling on the honesty sword. I just feel like I've become the guppy this year in our sea of sharks. And I'm just saying it from the jump. No expectations. Anwar, go ahead.
Well, this year shows that it's time for you to name a co-commissioner at very least to help you with your duties, because you didn't give a damn for pretty much most of the offseason. And so now it's time for you to hand it off to someone else.
I went to Alex and he was like, no, it wouldn't feel right. You're the commish. I'll try to do better. I had a hell of a Tuesday. Like I did good on Tuesday. It all came together.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, for my parting shot, it is certain things make you realize that you are aging, and you always get those reminders. Like I got the reminder I told you guys about, like when Serenity was interviewing and we were talking to her and she called me Mr. Richardson. And I was like, you can call me Mr. Richardson. You can go just call me Anwar. She's like, oh, my parents want me to respect my elders. I can't call people like elder. Like, oh, that hurt. And then I got another reminder this week, Catch, when the Texas announced Longhorn City Limits that Salt and Pepper would be performing before the Rice game. And then I had to look it up and I was like, wait a second. Like, these women are in their mid-50s, because I had to realize what my age is. I'm like, they're literally like all of us. Well, I'm close to getting AARP status, but like literally we're going to hear like women who are closer to 60 talking about push it real good, who are like grandmothers.
You can't do that song. Can they do that in 2021?
Yeah. Not only can they certainly will.
They will do that. And so I realized we're at a point where we're having rappers get old, because it's still kind of, a new genre of music. And so now we're looking at rappers getting old, rappers dying, and rappers going on senior tours. And so I start thinking now for like the friendly environment of what. So they want rappers, apparently, old rappers at Longhorn City Limits, at least one a year, right? So a couple of years ago, they had Ludacris. This year is Salt and Pepper. So I started thinking about who are like the family-friendly rappers that they can bring in for the old school people in the future. So Catch, the only ones I have left on the list are Busta Rhymes and maybe Missy Elliott.
I was going to say Busta. Have you seen Busta lately? He's been canceled lately, so I'm not sure that they're going to bring him around.
I don't know what he's done.
He got canceled for an anti-mask tape.
He's very anti-mask, anti-virus.
He's very
that'll do it. So maybe
you're leaving out Arrested Development in Tennessee. Come on, man. They bring that out, I'll be on stage singing with it.
But I don't know who's of the rappers who are alive that are somewhat popular that will move the older crowd. We're running out of people. I'm just gonna say.
MC Hammer still kicking?
Yeah, I'm sure you could get MC Hammer for a good deal. Yeah.
I've got one for you, Anwar.
Who you got?
I saw Rob Bass in concert back in like sometime in the 90s at Bob Popular's on 6th Street. He can come in and do It Takes Two, Enjoy and Pain, and then do It Takes Two again, and he's out. But the crowd would love it. The crowd would love it.
Do you think the 50-year-olds in the crowd that were into Rob Bass, though, the way that they were into Salt and Pepper or Ludacris or Buster or something. I mean, they literally only had two. I mean, at that point, bringing Vanilla Ice.
They have two bangers, and you play each of them twice.
Yeah.
So you play two bangers a total of 4 times. Takes up about 20 minutes. How much more are you really expecting out of your 50-year-old rapper at that point?
Is Wu-Tang or Nas or anything old enough yet?
I think Wu-Tang's probably too big for the ACL.
And you got to be a little bit of family friendly
like
too.
Method Man come or something. I don't know.
You also got to have a little family friendliness into it, Alex. So you got to have. It's almost like the rappers who went like a little mainstream, where it's not too crazy. I don't know if you want to bring everyone smoking their blunts up for Longhorn city limits, not on a UT campus. That's just a thought.
Jason, you got a parting shot? I'm looking at the clock. Onwar's got to be somewhere soon. So,
well, I too saw Rob Bass, by the way, back in the day in Houston, of all places, with Levert and Karen White and Bobby Brown as the headliner. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a show.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was good.
Levert is there. Like that's a hit of the show.
My parting shot as we record this Thursday morning, we're waiting on an commitment announcement from Justice Finkley, Rivals 250 defensive lineman, just outside the Rivals 100. He's 119. He's announcing at 4:15 Austin time, Central Time. If you're watching this, 4:15 Central Time, Texas, Alabama, Colorado. He's from Alabama. Everybody's had him pegged to Alabama. I predicted on Tuesday morning, I said, hey, man, I'm going to go out on a limb. I think it's going to be Texas. I'm sticking to that prediction for right now, unless something changes in the next few hours. But he's doing a really good job of keeping everybody guessing. I don't think, from what I've gathered, he hasn't even told the coaches where he's going, various staffs. So I think everybody's kind of trying to read the tea leaves, but I got a sneaky suspicion Texas might be in line for an upset here of Alabama for a kid from the state of Alabama that Nick Saban really wants. So, we still got a few hours. This thing could still take a few twists and turns, but Justin Finkley, 4:15, we'll be watching that one closely. Obviously, if it winds up being Texas, we'll have full coverage ready to roll and be a good reason for everybody to get excited. He's a very talented defensive lineman. It will add to an already impressive defensive line class for Texas if they get him. But again, Justice Finkley, defensive lineman out of Alabama, 4:15 announcement. It's going to be one of these ones where we're watching it as it stands right now. It's going to kind of be some excitement, man, because I don't know where he's going. Normally, I know where these kids are going. I'm 95% sure. With Justice, I really don't. So I'll be watching it kind of as excited as the rest of everybody because I stuck my neck out a little bit when everybody else is saying Alabama. I said, hey, I think it might be Texas. So it'll be interesting to watch and see how it all unfolds. We'll have our answer this afternoon.
Alex, you get the final parting shot. I was just going to say, what about an old school Alpha Rev AC, bringing them back? An old school Alpha Rev show at the Longhorn pregame concert. What do you think?
We're gonna do one next spring. So details on that.
Ooh,
the whole original crew is gonna be awesome.
Really?
Yeah. But
burying the lead here.
Yeah. But anyway, all right. So about Justice Finkley, just real quick, that kid's good. That's a good player. That would be a big pickup. It's just a shame that if he did commit, the first post in Jason's thread would be asking if he could play offensive line. No, man. Hey, look, my parting shot is just, enjoy your football this weekend, man. We got it back. We got football tonight. We have NFL football. NFL kicks off tonight. I'm as happy as can be about it. I know it's going to be a lot of extra work this week. It reminded me, it's like, man, we're back into it. We're back into the grind of football. But I speak for myself only saying this, but I feel blessed to be able to do it. I love football so much to be able to just watch it, analyze it, talk about it. It's great. And so even though it's a slog, the season, it's a slog, and doing all this work's a slog, man, it's a ton of fun. And just excited to watch some NFL, some college football this weekend, and certainly take it all in, because I know once we get to February and once we get to March and April and everything, we all just miss it like crazy. So it's good to have it back.
Amen to that. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening to this week's Orange Bloods Modcast. For myself, Jason, Anwar, and Alex, we will talk to you soon. You guys take care of each other. Later.